At 55, it's tied Blodgett to Arsenal with rollover in the left lane. The Edens, looking at 20 minutes like Cook to Montrose. Kennedy, 46 minutes, O'Hare to downtown. 23 from Montrose, 20 in the Express. Eisenhower, 49 minutes, 390 to downtown. Outbound 42, the exit to Mannheim is closed. Bryant, 30 minutes, 95th to downtown. I-57 at the Bishop Quarter Heavy. I'm Jim Talamonte on AM 560, The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. Your official Chicagoland weather forecast. From the 1-hour heating and air conditioning weather center, we should see partly sunny skies later today, high 33. Partly cloudy and 23 overnight. Currently, we have 28 at O'Hare. Next news at 7:30. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM.
He and his town halls are really an experience. Over the last couple of days, you had him call Madison Moore, this 21-year-old student at Mercer University,
a snickerdoodle, or what? He used some term I've never heard of.
Lying dog-faced pony soldier.
I don't even. She probably doesn't even know what that means.
I'm going to be a little bit mean for a second, okay? So, you're arguably the candidate with the greatest advantage in this race. You've been the vice president. You weren't burdened down by the impeachment trials. So, in the participation. So, how do you explain the performance in Iowa, and why should the voters believe that you can win the national election?
Iowa's a Democratic caucus. You ever been to a caucus? No, you haven't. You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were. Now you got to be honest. I'm going to be honest with you.
What a jag. You know what? Jagbag Thursdays has returned.
She said,
what
Madison Moore said it was kind of humiliating to be called a liar on national TVs by the former vice president. Instead of answering the question straightforward, his immediate response was an attempt to invalidate me by exposing my inexperience. He hadn't been to a caucus. Well, you have, Joe.
And you really didn't even show up at the Iowa caucus.
Why don't voters like you at a caucus, whether it's caucus or what happens tonight? What's your excuse tonight? Have you ever been to a primary? And I don't know what a lying pony-faced dog-faced pony soldier or whatever that is. I don't know what that is. I have no idea what he's talking about. But the good news is
that's like the No Malarkey tour.
Nobody else does either.
Well, and that girl, that young lady, she said she was humiliated, but she also said, if I had known, I would have done my hair and makeup.
Right.
That he was going to call her out and humiliate her like that.
Well, let that be a lesson. If you're going to ask Joe Biden a question at a town hall, expect to be on national TV because of what he says in response. Here's another one yesterday on guns.
Okay.
Joe Biden, treat us on the Second Amendment.
No, and by the way, those who say the tree of liberty is watered with the blood of patriots, a great line. Well, guess what? The fact is, if you're going to take on the government, you need an F-15 with Hellfire missiles. There's no way an AK-47 is going to take care of you if you're going to take on. You're worried about the government coming down, knocking down your door.
That prompted somebody to tweet out a quote from Joe Biden. If you're paddling upstream in a canoe and a wheel falls off, how many pancakes fit in a doghouse? None, because ice cream doesn't have bones. Isn't that a good one?
It's a good point. Those who say, you mean like Thomas Jefferson, Joe Biden? Is that who you're referring to with those about the blood of patriots? Right. So FYI, those of you with a sport rifle out there thinking you were going to overthrow the federal government, Joe Biden's ready to scramble the F-15s to take you out.
And then he finally realized last night, because, closing arguments for all the candidates, and he realized something, Dan.
Well, guess who else is in Manchester tonight?
Cool.
Donald Trump.
Oh.
What a coincidence. What a coincidence. I have to tell you, sometimes it feels like he's following me around. We're all ready to get rid of a president who calls generals to their faces. Losers, dopes, and babies. I know I am. Are you ready to get rid of a president who calls traumatic brain injury a headache? I know I am. Are you ready to get rid of a president who pins the Presidential Medal of Freedom on Rush Limbaugh? Are you ready to get rid of a president who has marched a decorated war hero out of the White House for telling the truth and who is a real hero and has real courage. And
It was the most lively I've seen him in 3 months.
Yeah. Speaking of
And then he
traumatic
went
brain
back to the
injuries, Joe Biden in Iowa, this story, and there's a lot of stories like this from the trail that don't get the sort of coverage they actually deserve. Just to tell you where Joe Biden is right now. I mean, in between the ears.
Yeah.
There was an activist, Tracy Reed, who has repped Black Lives Matter and Greenpeace in the past. This is recounted by Matt Taibbi in Rolling Stone. He asked Biden if he would agree to work toward phasing out fossil fuels. Before he knew it, recounts Taibbi, Biden was sticking a finger in his chest and angrily reading off credentials. Go back, 1986. I was the first one to ever introduce a climate change bill, he snapped. This activist said, I thought to myself, great, you did that in 1986, but if we've got 1 million species facing extinction, it's clearly still a problem. Biden pushed again. Political fact is a game changer, Biden jabbed, adding, I've been working my whole life. He poked Red in the sternum on
God.
fact, woke, whole, and life, then walked away like he dropped a mic. The scene was so bizarre that Red says he could only respond by instinct, drawing on post-Trayvon Martin strategies for black men to keep safe in charged situations. Yes, sir, no, sir, don't talk back, keep your hands visible. That's the way leftist activists believe they have to approach an irascible Joe Biden if you challenge Joe on his record or his position or why he didn't perform so well in Iowa. Boy, it is a remarkable meltdown for an unremarkable man. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Matt McDonald, managing editor of Spectator USA, who is in New Hampshire. Matt, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Joe Biden is trying to get out there and meet voters, but that seems to be the worst strategy he could employ.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the impact on his poll numbers, you wonder whether staying home might have helped him more than going out and doing all of these meetings all over the state. I was at the town hall yesterday in an Orthodox church here in Manchester, and he had like you said. Well, I was there to hear the clip where he was talking about Trump being in town, and he doesn't seem necessarily presidential, I would say, in the way in which he is addressing the people who are turning out to come and see him in his town hall. And as his poll numbers dwindle and he starts to get all these poor results in the actual votes themselves, he's acting increasingly more erratically, which for a candidate who was already fairly erratic is it's a sight to see.
Well, what kind of people did you notice that were there? Were they elderly people? Any college students?
Could you count them on one hand?
I mean, there was about 150 people there yesterday. I would say that the crowd was probably younger than I was expecting. There's a huge contingent of firefighters who are coming out for Joe Biden. But largely, I think that's due. I spoke to one of them, and largely, I think that's more due to his stance on healthcare being less extreme than the likes of Bernie and Elizabeth Warren, because obviously the firefighters have got competitive, decent healthcare packages, which were negotiated through their unions, and therefore the unions don't want to see those getting wiped out by a Medicare for All type plan. But I would say, there were students there in Manchester yesterday, younger than I assumed, and then a couple of protesters as well, who I think had maybe got lost on their way to the Trump rally. So there were a few interesting moments where there was disruptions during his talk, which he handled quite well. I mean, Jill, there was a moment yesterday where this protester shoots up and starts yelling at Joe about when are you going to stop touching women and children, and the first person to, the security in the venue itself didn't seem particularly stringent. The first person to react was actually Dr. Jill Biden, who stands up and starts ushering him away from her husband. I don't think that that's something which is going to work long term throughout the rest of this election. Like, you can't always have your wife jumping to your defense to protect you from criticism.
Being his enforcer, right, sergeant at arms.
Exactly.
That's what she is.
What about the energy more generally? There was some disappointment in Iowa, not just in terms of the administration of the election, but in terms of the turnout. This is supposed to be all hands on deck, and it turned out to be a rather pedestrian level of turnout in Iowa historically. What about New Hampshire? Energy?
I think that the Iowa results, if we can call them results, probably will have a likely to have a negative effect on how people turn out here. I think the candidate here, if you're looking for shifts in enthusiasm, the candidates where you're likely to see a higher turnout in New Hampshire are obviously going to be Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, because they are senators of neighboring states here. I'm not. I think it's likely that Joe Biden does even worse here than he did in Iowa. And the enthusiasm in that room, he's a former vice president of the United States of America speaking to 150 people. But there's a stark contrast between the way that he was working the room yesterday, and then I don't know if you've seen pictures, but Bernie Sanders was having a rally across the state where there was 7,500 people there.
We had a rock band too.
And he's exactly supported by the Strokes and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So it's quite a contrast.
I know. Well, then what about Pete Buttigieg? Because in a lot of the polls, they have him in second and jockeying for first. On another polls, he's third. But what kind of vibe are you getting from his campaign?
Well, I saw Pete speak on Saturday night at the McIntyre Shaheen 100 Club dinner, which is it's in the Southern New Hampshire University Arena, which is the same place where Trump spoke last night.
Yeah. And let me guess, it had all the flavor of a rice cake. That speech from Mayor Pete.
Yeah, I mean, it was. What I can't say it was the most substantive thing I've ever heard from a politician, put it that way. But he did have one of the largest, if not, I'd say either largest or the second largest contingent of supporters there, who were kind of they brought the most accoutrement along with them. Like they were almost all in matching fluorescent yellow T-shirts. They had, like the type of clappers that you might bring to a soccer game, and they were very adamant and enthusiastic in their chants of "boot edge edge," which is their catchy chant to remind you how to say the candidate's name. He's the person who should be benefiting most from the Biden camp, and that's why the Biden kind of decline, which is why you've seen Joe Biden going after Pete a lot more in the debate and over the last 3 days as well.
The interesting thing, too, is even looking ahead, as I sort of predicted, the much vaunted firewall for Joe Biden in South Carolina, it's already starting to crumble. The talk of black voters in South Carolina, the majority of that primary electorate for the Democrats, being Joe Biden's salvation doesn't look like it's going to come to pass. So just a little bit of a look ahead. Joe Biden's black support has been cut in half,
really?
Many moving to undecided. And so that bodes well for those candidates that have energy behind them, which would be Bernie and Pete.
Yeah, I don't think that the black vote are going to show up for Pete Buttigieg.
No, that's true.
That's the difference.
Maybe Bernie.
I think that potentially Bernie. Tom Steyer is actually the guy who in South Carolina has been spending the most money.
Yeah.
Doing outreach to the black community by buying. He's been, if you're a billionaire, I think these races are slightly easier. So he's in a position where he's been buying full-page ads in some of the majority black newspapers down there. But yeah, Biden doesn't look like as much of a sure thing in South Carolina. His strength as a candidate has always been familiarity, right? People feel like they know Joe Biden and who he is, but the judgment that you get now from seeing him, how you see him act on the campaign trail and how you see him perform in debates and in speeches is we feel like we know who Joe Biden is, and this is like, is this the Joe Biden who would have run in 2016, or is it someone who is declining not just in poll numbers but in the mental capacity as well?
Well, or is it the guy? Hey, I remember that Joe Biden. That's the guy that I didn't support in 2008, and I also didn't support in 1988. It's not about even his mental acuity or whatever. This guy just hasn't gone anywhere as a presidential candidate over 3 decades.
In the general election, I can potentially see that being the case and being what's borne out. So, therefore now the candidate who has the familiarity advantage is Bernie Sanders, because he is exactly where he was in the 2016 race. A lot of the policies which he was pushing in 2016 have kind of been adopted as the norms within the Democratic Party. And even though he's also 78 years old, and I've seen him at a couple of events, and he looks a bit physically tired, mentally, and when he speaks, he speaks as in the same way that he has spoken throughout the last 40 years in his career in politics.
Yeah.
So
like Dostoevsky.
you may consider you may consider him Crazy Bernie as the president does, but he's consistent in his craziness, and it's a craziness of policy that you're criticizing there, rather than something having an elderly person who you're having genuine concern about and trying to wrestle their car keys off them. Just
last question real quick. Impeachment. Is anybody, and all those Democrat primary voters, is anybody talking about impeachment?
I have seen a couple of the senators who were at the trial who have obviously spoken about impeachment. Michael Bennett addressed it when I saw him speak, but then not many people had stuck around to see Michael Bennett speak at that point.
Yeah.
But voter-wise, and when you speak to the people on the ground here, it's not something that really registered. Like during the debate, Amy Klobuchar hit Mayor Pete on this because, again, she's competing with him for that moderate kind of Democratic vote, where she had a go at Pete because Pete had said that he found watching the impeachment proceedings exhausting, and said that he'd rather switch over the channel and watch cartoons. I think, if you're a constitutional scholar, then that's potentially the right perspective to have, that impeachment shouldn't be boring or tiring. But I also think that what Pete said in that moment is quite relatable, and that's why he said it. That's because it's not something which has an amazing impact on the Democratic voting base, other than if you're, I think, far too into politics. Whereas here in a primary, you'll have people who are just kind of showing up, haven't been glued to CNN or Fox, or they aren't reading the New York Times every single day and following every single micro narrative of the Trump thing. They just look at the world around them, and then they're going to show up today at a polling station and make their vote. And if they haven't been following that, and I don't really blame people for not following impeachment, then it's hard to say that it'll register that much on their radar.
He is Matt McDonald, managing editor of Spectator USA, joining us from New Hampshire. Matt, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Before you see it on TV, share it on Facebook, or read about it in the paper, hear it here first. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Balance of Nature. Changing the world, one life at a time.
I'll tell you, I usually sleep on my side, and the joint pain in my shoulders has been just absolutely excruciating. Since I've been on your fruits and vegetables, the joint pain has gone away. That's an amazing thing, because I have been suffering from that now for probably 20 years. And to have that just disappear like that, I give you guys all the credit for it, because to have that disappear like it has is pretty amazing to me.
Don't wait to see what getting over 10 servings of whole fruits and vegetables every day can do for you. Right now, Balance of Nature is offering free shipping and 35% off on any new preferred order of fruits and veggies. Start your journey to better health today by calling 1-800-2468-751 or by going to balanceofnature.com, and make sure to receive this special radio offer by using discount code CHICAGO.
So maybe you have missing teeth in your